everyone, it's Annabelle and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I actually just thought I would update you briefly on some flasking experiments I've been doing with some orchid seeds. You may remember the first time I tried I recorded the whole process and I'll link that up in the corner and down below. But that didn't actually succeed. Nothing germinated at all despite a few of the flasks remaining clear. Nina sent me another seed pod which was the same cross but reversed seed and pollen parents for my birthday, and I thought I'd have another go. So I did things a bit differently this time. I ordered some different medium. So I looked it up and researched Vanda seeds a bit, and there was one medium that was recommended as opposed to some of the other orchids where there were a few different mediums that were recommended. So I'm not totally sure as to what the specific requirements are and whether, so for example with Phragmipediums there were a few different media you could use, but they were like use a half strength and add this much coconut water to supplement the sugars that you're reducing by using it half strength, that sort of thing. So it's media in itself, and media choice seems to be quite a complicated process. So this time I used a media P668, but it's actually called 658 on the supply that I used because it's exactly the same but it's been supplemented already with agar and charcoal. There's a few different variations you can get. I tried a few different things. I did half with calcium hypochlorite bleach instead of sodium hypochlorite that I used before. I followed the protocol on the website of the French supplier that I use for this media, which is Patrick Polobos Orchides. I'll link them down below. But they have, I've probably butchered that name, sorry. They have a few different protocols, which is really helpful. So I've just done things a bit differently. I used half calcium hypochlorite as a disinfectant tool for the seeds, half hydrogen peroxide. I was actually able to get some in now, whereas before I just was struggling to get hydrogen peroxide in. It's come back in stock, it seems. So yeah, just thought I'd update you on how things are going. So I'm going to get these out. I've put them all into Ziploc bags because I was terrified before of actually getting them out of the glove box that I used. I was storing them all in there because I was thinking, if there is any breach in the ceiling, if I can keep them in a box within a box type of situation, then I'm going to be increasing the sterility of the situation. But I just decided that was a bit stupid because I needed to get them out and look at them, and as they germinate I'm going to need to give them light. So I've put them all in bags so that I can feel a little bit more comfortable about handling them. They are all sealed as well, ish. You can see some of the, so when I used tape as a sealant this time instead of cling film because there was a few comments that cling film can encourage like hyphal growth of fungi. So I guess it creates like a moist environment. So I used 3M lab tape, which is kind of like a halfway point between microporous surgical tape and masking tape, I guess. So yeah, I'm going to update you on these. So let's get them onto the table and have a little look at what's going on. So I moved them all over into the new house, mostly in this box, except for a few that wouldn't fit there. So I'm just going to grab them out of the box. I've been leaving them in because while they germinate, they don't really need the light. It's once they've germinated that they need light to start kind of photosynthesizing. But mainly up until they are out of the flask, they're relying on the actual media to supply all of their sugars and nutrients. So whereas usually they would photosynthesize to produce those sugars and energy, so the photosynthesis element isn't actually so critical until you want to get them onto that kind of metabolism before you deflask. So a lot of people before they deflask remove like the lid or just loosen the lid to kind of start letting kind of air supply in. Carbon dioxide, so they can kick off the photosynthesis process and kind of increase light as well to kind of try and get them on that. So it is important that they are exposed to light as they're developing, but up until they germinate it's not so critical. And if you think about how they would germinate in the forest, they're probably getting very little light until they start getting bigger. But obviously this is a kind of artificial way of doing it because in the home we can't provide the mycorrhizal fungi that they need to germinate. So we're using media instead, which can obviously get contaminated very easily and taken over with pathogenic fungi and bacteria, which will inhibit germination a lot. So although we're doing this artificially, we're kind of taking away some of the things that the orchid needs and providing them in a different form. So I think a good kind of analogy is that this is kind of like a life support kind of system, and at some point they need to kind of take that push and be able to breathe on their own, but up until that point they don't necessarily need so much light, which is why I've been keeping them in this box, because I moved them open like that and I was just like, it'll keep them more sterile, honestly, it'll keep them safer, but let's get them out and have a look. So I didn't actually film the flasking of these because I had a lot on. Like I had 3 Phragmipedium lindenii seed pods, which I didn't actually realise were seed pods. They remained on the Phragmipedium and I guess they had swollen a bit, but they didn't really look like seed pods to me, and it was pure laziness that I hadn't cut the spike. One opened in the middle of the night, so I realised they were seed pods. Kind of stupid, but I just hadn't really looked at it, and the Phragmipedium itself was taking quite a long time to establish. I'd had it for about a year, but I guess that was probably, the growth was slow because it was carrying 3 seed pods, which I didn't realise. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, I post a lot of updates on that, so a lot of that updates and process was posted on Instagram and also on the community tab here. So I definitely recommend subscribing, and if you want to see updates like that, check in my community tab. I don't know if community tabs are visible in your feed if you're not subscribed. They might be if they're popular. I don't know how the algorithm works and whether it promotes community posts. If you want to see updates like that, I often post things like that. So follow me on Instagram and check my community tab for little updates like that that don't require like a full video. So I've flasked those, used them as an opportunity to test out a few growing methods, and also flasked the seeds that Nina sent me, which is the Vanda. So the seeds that Nina sent me are a little bit ahead. They're a couple of weeks ahead I flasked them, but I'd also prepped some media, then had a bit left over and had to make up a whole batch of new media for the frag seeds. So some of my conditions are a little bit different. So I've got some media that has peptone in, which is supposed to increase germination, some that doesn't have peptone in, some that has the seeds were sterilised with hydrogen peroxide, some with bleach, or the calcium hypochlorite, not the sodium hypochlorite this time. What other conditions do I have? I added, I think it's called NAC to some. I will put that up. I can't remember exactly what it's called. It's a growth hormone to some, which is supposed to help development. Yeah, so I just tried out a few different things with different media. I also sowed some frag seeds onto one of the Rolk Orchidine media that I had left over before, but that got contaminated. It was in those buckets, and I found that those buckets seemed to get contaminated about a month after I sowed, which indicates to me that the seal wasn't very good on them, or I don't know, they seemed like the pop seals don't seal as well as the screw top seals, just from what I've found, because I also had a flask, I don't know if you remember, that I actually didn't sterilise because it wasn't the correct polypropylene that I could actually sterilise by autoclaving or pressure cooking, which is what we were doing. So I pressure cooked the flasks, they remained sterile for several weeks, and that flask that I didn't pressure cook, I just dunked it in bleach, remained sterile permanently, even though I didn't sow anything in it because I wasn't sure about it. But it was a really awkward one, so I didn't actually use it in the end. But that one remained sterile, the pop top buckets didn't. So I don't think that they were very good flasking containers. So I switched to jars with screw top lids. So there's a lot of me talking about this, but there's not a huge amount to see at this point. So I just kind of wanted to, for anyone who's interested, give like a really detailed look. So we do have some germination. The Vanda seeds I sowed the 12th of August, so we're like the 28th now, so however many days that is, 3 weeks. So I don't know if you can see in there, but let me shine a torch. I got this tip from Matthew. He said if you shine a torch you can see the germination. Yeah, so they've germinated really well. They started off swelling and kind of going a bit yellow, and it wasn't entirely clear. They kind of went granular and then turned yellow, and now they're kind of starting to turn green. I don't know if you can see. They're getting bigger. You can see I've clumped them massively. And there's a few little bulb patches in the media. So this was sterilised with bleach. It's an old coffee lid. I've sealed it with both parafilm and the surgical tape, because I had some parafilm that I bought as well. I wasn't really sure what to do, quite honestly, so I've tried a few different things. Let's see if we can get you up close. So that's like the start of protocorm formation, I think. Protocorm are the kind of first stage after germination. I think it's the start of it. It's very, so I'm not using the technically correct terms a lot. Did research this, but this is my first time doing it, and at some point you kind of have to just dive in, and as you get more experience you kind of get more familiar with the lingo, the terminology that you should be using. So I'm sorry for anyone watching this who's really experienced that I'm not using the correct terms. I am going to kind of work on that, but honestly I didn't know if this would succeed or not. I read as much as I could, but I'm kind of an online researcher, so a lot of the research that we do now is online. Most of it is, and most is open access, or it's getting towards open access. So I guess I'm a kind of the generation where I don't really buy books. I know that's bad, but most books and most information that you need as a researcher is online in journals, and articles are published online. So I'm not a massive book person. I will download books and ebooks. So this one was sowed with hydrogen peroxide. It's a Vanda Denisonia again. Same at the same time, but with hydrogen peroxide instead of bleach. And I think we've got quite a lot more germination in this. You can see a few bold spots. I'm just gonna get a light on there. So how do I show this? So like this is really thickly sowed. Honestly, I thought I'd sown thinly, but apparently I have not. And you can see kind of where I deposited the seeds and where the kind of water tension has created these little bold spots where the liquid that the seeds were suspended in hasn't like reached those areas. So yeah, we've got loads of germination in this little flask, so this is going to need to be replated. The other one might not so much, and I've got some others that haven't germinated as thickly, where I was just using up the last of the seeds. So I'm going to kind of experiment with replating, not replating, that sort of thing. This will definitely need replating. Like, look at that. It's a ridiculous amount of seeds that have germinated. So yeah, that's quite exciting. So those are the two flasks of the Vandas that have germinated the most. I have some others in here where one batch of the media I used has kind of unset. The agar proportion must have been off. I pre-bought it mixed, so it was a bit weird. It seemed to set to start with, and then after I added the seeds, I noticed some of them have like unset. So the seeds are going to struggle to germinate in that, I think. There's some patches that have set. There's like in the middle, there's a patch that's set, that some seeds are like germinating on. So I also experimented with my Phragmipedium seeds of venting, but the vent sticker actually, I bought these flasks from the flask supplier, and after I pressure cooked it, the vent sticker just came off. So I've kind of taped over it with the masking tape, surgical tape type stuff. Yeah, not amazing. So this is sterilised with hydrogen peroxide. See if I can show you. The Phragmipedium seeds were kind of tiny. There you go. You can kind of see that's how the Vandas started doing at their first stage of germination. This is not going to focus, is it? There you go. They start like taking on this grainy rice pudding type appearance just before they germinate, or as they're germinating. Sorry, it's really having trouble focusing. I hope that that was kind of visible. So The Phragmipedium seeds were completely different to the Vanda seeds. The Vanda seeds were kind of a dusty light brown and they sunk when I was disinfecting them, whereas the Phragmipedium seeds were like a really, really fine, granular, kind of elongated black. They looked more like classic seeds. They were kind of longer rather than the dusty Vanda seeds, and they floated, and so they're a little bit more difficult to handle. But yeah, as they're germinating, they're obviously turning that kind of more whitish colour, whereas they were very black to start with. I will put some footage up on screen of the Instagram's post that I did and the community post here, which kind of recorded a little bit what the actual seeds looked like. So those are starting to germinate. The Phragmipedium seems to have quite a lot of germination. Everything's remained pretty sterile. So 2 of the Phragmipedium seed pods were unopened, although after I soaked them in bleach I could see little cracks where seeds were starting to come out, so they were right at that point of opening, but I caught them before they'd actually fully opened and dispersed the seeds, whereas one of them had opened. So basically it was kind of a semi-green pod, although it was just starting to open, so they would have, from the second that they just start to kind of get little tiny fissures in them, air's kind of getting in, so contamination could get in. But I've had very little contamination at all in the Phragmipedium flasks, whereas I sowed quite a lot of Vanda flasks and a few of them have been contaminated. Obviously the Vandas came from Nina in Spain. They went through a postal service, so they had a lot of environmental chances to get contaminated, and when I got them they were completely open on the paper that Nina had sent it in, so they had more chance for contamination. So I guess the sooner you can get it, if you can get the seed pods before they've actually opened but as they're just about to, then I guess in theory you've got a much better chance. In green pod sowing you have a lot less chance of contamination, but they're a little bit more difficult to handle. So although technically I had some green pods, I didn't do that like a green pod. I opened them on the side and sterilised them still, and basically no contamination from that. It's a lot easier to work with as well if you've got your seeds in a solution and can inject them, rather than having to kind of try and flick dry seeds from a green pod. Well, they're not dry, they're more difficult to get out basically. Some of these media have peptone in, some don't. It's difficult to tell at this stage whether there's a clear difference, so I think we'll need to wait a little bit longer to compare. But this one also has the BAP, sorry it wasn't NAC, I don't know why I thought NAC, I think that's something I use at work, NAC, it's an oxidizer or something. You can see the seeds actually up the side of the flask there. A little bit of germination I think going on there. But yeah, not loads to show, but the main kind of thing is the Vanda seeds that I've got germinated. Do I have any other Vanda seed pods here? I think these are all Phragmipedium ones. And I even sowed them in little spice jars as well. But, oh, that's a Phragmipedium one there. Let's see. Got the start of some germination going on. And the actual seeds are kind of up the side there as well. Yeah, so again, got the start of germination going on for the Phragmipedium ones. I'm going to have a lot of Phragmipedium lindenii, because basically they all remain sterile. It's difficult to actually see them inside of the Ziploc bags, but I hope that you can kind of see some of that. Anyway, the main exciting news is the Vandas, which have germinated loads, so super exciting. Yeah, so I will post an update soon, hopefully, when the Vandas start to mature. Things are happening quite fast now, so you can see a few in here which are kind of turning a kind of brighter yellow towards the more kind of greenish side. So I'm zooming in using my phone magnification, which is like an optical zoom, not an actual physical zoom, I guess. But it just helps to see a little bit better, I think, the profile of the seeds and the kind of granularity that they're taking on and the colour change. So this is a very early stage of development for the embryo, but you can kind of see the change happening, and I think the next stage will be swelling even further and kind of taking on a more bright green coloration, I think. But I'm completely new to this, so I'm just finding the whole process really fascinating, and I hope that you guys are enjoying watching the journey as well, and that it's an interesting update. But I felt that it would be helpful to show you kind of from a very layman's perspective early germination results for these. And hopefully you'll see some baby Orchid Room Ninja Orchids Vandas in the near future. Thank you so much for watching my little update today, and I will update you soon on their progress for these guys. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a like or subscribe to my channel for more regular baby orchid updates. And I'll see you guys all later. Bye!